final panel discussion of the day. The panel discussion will be based on fiscal decentralization and local governance. This session will explore the experiences of various states in India to construct local finance for better service delivery in rural and urban areas, and will provide an overview of the objectives and designs of fiscal transfers practiced in India. I would now like to invite our esteemed panelists on stage. Mr. Surendranath Tripathi, Director General, Indian Institute of Public Administration; Dr. Debarpita Roy, Fellow, Center for Social and Economic Progress; Dr. G. Narendra Kumar, Director General, National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj; Professor V. N. Alok, Professor for Urban Finance at the Indian Institute of Public Administration; and Professor V. Srinivasachari, Director, Administrative Staff College of India. I would now request Mr. Surendranath Tripathi to moderate the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Hope you are not dead and still alive. This being the fifth session, I have to see that your energy level do not drop. And the ISB has taken enough care to see that your sugar level also doesn't drop. In such a sweet and not so enthusiastic environment, we are starting our fifth session. Friends, in the morning we discussed about what is public policy, role of practitioners and researchers. Does it make any impact? You got a bird's eye view that it does make impact. It may not be one-on-one. It may not be subject to a, what we call it, research first, policy later, and impact evaluation much later. But there are many policies which are evolving policy by design. One of the subjects that we are going to discuss in session 5 is fiscal decentralization. This is one such problem which has, I think, gauged the attention of humanity since we started organizing ourselves. When we wanted the state to establish itself, first we wanted it to provide safety and security, the rest of the things to be done by the citizens. When we became the people of India and adopted our own constitution in 1947, we adopted a constitutional democratic model where everybody was given adult suffrage. Everybody of 18 age later on became an voter. He can change the government of his choice. So the voice and choice of people got enlisted in our preamble itself. In our own preamble and constitution of India, the greatest, longest, and one of the most surviving constitution, managing the largest democracy of the world, now we claim to be the mother of democracy also. The constitution is seen as a devolution of power instrument. When I was a student of Allahabad University, my professor used to tell, a state has monopoly over violence, therefore it needs a constitution to limit its power. So lawmaking power of the states are limited with the invention of basic structure by the Supreme Court, with the invention of separation of power and many other instruments which are there in the Constitution of India. One such issue remains unresolved: who will do what in case of public service delivery? So fiscal decentralization should be seen as such, as if it is a suitable model for efficient and cost-effective public service delivery. It can also be seen as instrument of delegation of power. Because if you want public service delivery, if my son wants to study in ISB, the only criteria is that he should be brilliant, A, I should be able to pay the fee, B. Same thing is not true for if my son wants to go to a third-rate college, teacherless college, blackboardless college, not digital, but physical, but have all the features of a virtual college. Nobody to teach, nobody to understand. Is that education? Answer is no. Point is, if you are taking the public service delivery route of fiscal decentralization, then there are certain concepts, and I think my learned professor will like to deal with many of them. I would not like to take thunder from them, because after all I am a bloody bureaucrat. And I know my limitation that we should not venture into area which is the paradise of academics. But fact remains that if you take a public service delivery model, then couple of concepts will come. Which service should be done by whom? Can banking be done by panchayat? Answer is no. Can demonetization be done by urban local body? Answer is no. But can job be provided by urban local bodies? Answer could be perhaps yes. So many such concepts are there which has been gaining the attention of people for so many years. Panchayati Raj, our urban local body, we claim that we were organizing first in urban centers. Because if you take up the history of Indian economy, we were a manufacturing economy before we became agriculture economy. If you take up the Charwak system or all the systems that were there in the Arthashastra, every village has a Lohar, a Kahar, a Badhai and this and that. So villages were functional republics, which means we were manufacturing economy, but we were producing as much as the village needed and that much which people were prepared to pay for it. Quality and cost were not the issue. Paying capacity was the only issue. Nobody was discussing GDP per capita, this and that. Those concepts were alien, but service to humanity was being provided because India was essentially a manufacturing economy. Until 17th century or till the early 18th century, we were leading with 24% GDP share of the world. In the previous session, a lot of decline issues were discussed. Even today, even if you make a zero tariff barrier, you are not going to be gaining much unless you are a producer or a factory of the world. We can be envious of our neighbor, but we have to match them by manufacturing much better than by being envious of them, like Onida TV, owner's envy and neighbor's pride. We have to rethink ourselves which model we want to adopt. Friends, fiscal decentralization and local governance consist of 4 words. 4 words is generally not a good word in English language when we talk of Instagram age. But here fiscal has to be understood more than what we call it finance plus. Similarly, what is decentralization, what is centralization debate also has to be answered. How much fiscal should be decentralized and how much fiscal should be centralized. Same thing is true for local and government. What is local? For Sambalpur town, maybe Atavira is local. For an Orissa boundary between Orissa and West Bengal is local. And if you go further, you will find that even son, we are talking of one word, one family, Vasudha Kutumbakam. So how much local, how much vocal should we become for local? And within that, what is governance? There is difference between government and governance. I think academics knows much more than what bureaucrats know, because we generally use them interchangeably. If you are from government, you are necessarily a government. If you are governing properly, you are also doing governance. If you are doing badly, you should go to jail. Let somebody else provide that service, even if it is being provided by the government. So there are 2 routes. One we call it public service delivery route. Second is empowerment route. And for both there are a lot of philosophies, lot of theories, and many of these things will be dealt by our learned colleagues who are sitting with me. Professor B.N. Alok, Professor Urban Finance in IIPA will deal about the framework and with a special emphasis on rural local bodies. Dr. Devabrata Roy, Fellow Center for Social and Economic Progress, will essentially deal with urban finance. Dr. G. Narendra Kumar, your own person from NIRD Hyderabad, will deal with the rest of the local and rural areas. And similarly, Mr. Chari, Mr. B. Srinivas Chari, Director ASCII, will deal with the urban issues, how fiscal decentralization and local governance can work for the citizen of India. Friends, we all know that it is public policy dialogue, and public policy dialogue means exchange of ideas. Free-flowing idea is the best way. Somebody said that sunlight is not the best infectant, but free ideas do not suffer from any such limitations. We can be idiotic but free, and we can be free without being looking wise. But it is better to be wise than otherwise. So with these few remarks, let me request Professor B.N. Alok to open the inning for us. Okay, over to you, sir. Time is for 10 minutes for each.
Everybody speaks from the mic, so I also. Good evening, everyone. I am first of all grateful to the ISP for having invited us on this panel. This particular session, as the Patiji just mentions, about fiscal decentralization and local governance. As he very rightly said, what is fiscal? It is the center, state or local. Fiscal policies are generally designed at the union and state government level. The word center is nowhere in the constitution, so I will not use the word center here, but the word union is there. And my perspective here is a federal perspective. And what is this federal perspective? Federal perspective means what federalism is a method by which the power is divided between the general, that is national, union, federal, and state, that is subnational or regional government, so that within the sphere they remain autonomous, at the same time they cooperate with each other. It's a little complicated, but the short point is that no public policies can be drawn where the roles of each level of government are not there. Okay? Whether you like it or you do not like it, but it has to be there. So far as at least the service delivery is concerned, service delivery to me is the local service delivery, which all of us are concerned. For example, the waste management, the potable drinking water supply, street lights, okay? Issuance of birth certificate, death certificate, this is everybody's concern. And in most countries, whether it is federal country or it's a unitary country like UK or France, these services are rendered by the local governments. And in India, the local governments are panchayats in the rural areas and municipalities in the urban areas. If we look at the Federal Assembly in India, it comprises the union government at the top, 28 states. Some of them are special category states, or what we call it hilly states or northeastern states. They get special fiscal dispensations from the union government. Okay, so 28 states and then some general category states including Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Then down the line, we do have the panchayats at 3 rungs, that is the district panchayat, block panchayat and the village panchayats. So about 250,000 panchayats are in numbers, and 3.2 million elected representatives. So we have so many governments in this country. And then in the urban areas, about 4,300 odd municipalities. In the big towns like Hyderabad, we have municipal corporations. In not so big cities, we have municipal councils, and the areas which is under transitions from the rural to urban, the local government is called Nagar Panchayats. The definition of these entities are not there in the constitutions. It is there in the state acts. The point I'm just trying to make here is that India, when we got our independence, the original form of the constitutions, it identified the 2 tier of government, that is the union government and the state government. Then this third, that is municipalities and panchayat, it has been superimposed in 1993. The bill was presented in 1992. It became an act only in 1993. Though Mahatma Gandhi, he talked a lot about local governments. There was a constitution, some of us know, it is called the Gandhian constitutions, that Shriman Narayan Agarwal he drafted, and Gandhi wrote the foreword of that. But somehow the disciples or the people, those who were working with Gandhi, they ignored Gandhi and adopted the British Constitution, which is like a 1935 Act. Okay? So the Indian Constitution, which is there, is largely a 1935 Act. So in 92-93 we created, it crept into the books of statute through the national legislations. Now look at the local governments which have been created through national constitutions, like in India, like in Brazil, like in Pakistan or Nigeria and a couple of other places, and the local government created through a state constitutions in some other countries, whereas like United States and Australia, where you have more than one constitutions, it has been created through a state constitutions. Then other mechanisms, central legislation, state legislation in Germany, and lastly through an executive order that was there in China. So local government was created through an executive order. Now anyone sitting here would say the most formal arrangement is the national constitutions. Ironically, if the local government is created through the most formal arrangement, it is the weakest. It's weak in Brazil, it's weak in India, it's weak in Brazil, okay, it's weak in Pakistan. Whereas it is created through the executive order that is there in China, is very strong. It contributes more than 50% of the total revenue of the whole country. Okay. Now, looking at this, how much the panchayats they contribute to their total expenditure requirements is just about 10%. The rest of the money, it comes from either the union government or the state government or several vertical programs. Likewise, the municipalities, if you leave the municipal corporations, on an average they contribute just about 50% through their own source revenues. The rest of the municipal councils and Nagar Panchayat, Debarbita and Dr. Chari will talk more about this, contribute very, very little. So what are their own source of revenue? Property tax, both in panchayat and municipalities, it contribute a substantial amount. Then the second source of revenue could be borrowing. Many people say the panchayats and municipalities cannot really borrow from the market, but we do have many acts. Some of the acts which is there of the British vintage, that's the 1914 Act, it allows panchayat and municipalities to borrow from the market. And many municipal corporations like Ahmedabad Municipal Corporations, Bangalore, Hyderabad, they have gone to the market. Even your smart cities missions and the Amrit, they do support that you go to the market and get money from there. Borrowing. And then the third thing comes the vertical programs. We do have Narega. In the first session, the gentleman, Mr. Sinha, is reviewing Narega's program. And likewise, you have many other programs, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, health missions. In those programs, Panchayat have some say. Either they identify the beneficiaries or they implement that programs. So the money flows through the state to the local governments. Likewise, you also have programs in the urban sectors and in which municipalities or municipal councils and Nagar Panchayat have some say. When we have this 73rd and 74, there were two schedules which was inserted. These two schedules were 11 schedules and 12 schedules. 11 schedule enumerates 29 matters. I still use the term matters, because many people use this as functions, which is not the case. If you see the corresponding article in the constitutions, that is Article 243G, it says that the union and the state government can create verticals on that panchayat has some say. So likewise, 12 schedules, it has 18 matters, and these matters have something to do with the municipalities. So own source revenue, borrowing, vertical programs, and then the two big source of revenues, that is the Union Finance Commissions and the State Finance Commissions. Union Finance Commissions, and many of us, we know that it has been created, it is being constituted every 5th year, and they make their recommendations. The Parliament finally decides how much money of the central revenue kitty can be transferred to the states, and after the 73rd and 74th, they can also transfer money to panchayat and municipalities. The corresponding articles are 283 B, B and C. So the last Finance Commission, that is the 15 Finance Commissions, have allocated more than 4 lakhs crores of rupees over a period of 5 years or so for both panchayat and municipalities. Some of the money is conditional. If you raise this much of revenue, then just the last minute, sir. And so that's about the Union Finance Commissions. The last is the State Finance Commission, which is actually need to be strengthened further. In Telangana, you have the first Finance Commissions. In many other states, we have 6 Finance Commissions. The State Finance Commission has to allocate resources from the state kitties to the local government. Now, the last point I wanted to make here is, how are you going to assess the resource requirement of the local governments? In 1963, we have Jakaria Commissions. And the Jakaria Commissions assess the cost of basic services. If it is being rendered in the plain areas, coastal areas, hilly areas, desert areas. And we do not really have an update of the Jakaria Commissions. So no Finance Commission, whether the union or the states, will not be able to assess this on a normative basis, because those kind of assessments are not available with us. So things are going on, and we do need to strengthen the state finance commissions. We do need to strengthen the local governments. Thank you, sir. I stop it here.
Thank you, Dr. Alok. You just mentioned about the constitutional arrangement. Many of the word, if you are not very familiar, you can understand from him after the session is over. Let me request DG NID PR to say the rest, whatever he thinks about it. Over to you, sir. Time.
Everybody who's present here. At the outset, I'd like to thank Professor Alok for laying the foundation on fiscal decentralization, service delivery, and good governance. I'll try to build upon what foundation he laid in terms of some things that are happening and some work that we're doing in the NIRD. So this will be the brief outline of the presentation. Let's see how far we can get through with this. And this will be a basic framework for discussion, and I'll try to update you with some developments and some work that we are doing towards fiscal decentralization and improved local governance. So these two aspects I will be focusing on: fiscal decentralization, status of decentralization, and the local governance delivery. So why is it necessary for us to focus on decentralization? Why is it important? Theory says the design of decentralization leads to greater efficiency. And if we look at developed countries, including the USA, and talk to a citizen about the importance of various governments that he encounters every day, whether it's the federal government or it's the state government or a local government, most people recognize the importance of the local government much more than the state government and the federal government, because they have to do much more with the local government than with the state and the federal government. However, in India, it's not that way. We look quite substantially to the work of the state government and the federal government. That's because the local governments are not strong enough in service delivery, even though they can be highly efficient if they are well organized. The importance of the local governments is that they have the authority to respond to local needs, to see what are the local needs and design their work to meet the local needs, which the state governments and the central or federal government may not be in a position to do so well because of the distance at which they are placed. At the same time, while being able to respond to local needs, they also fit into a good accountability system in the sense that they are accountable to the local voters for what services they provide. Therefore, they can respond to local needs while being accountable. At the same time, they can deliver services efficiently because they know what are the local resources available and how best to deliver those services to meet people's expectations and needs. This is what is called as the subsidiarity principle. At whatever lowest level a service can be delivered, it should be delivered at that level because it is at that level that it can be delivered most efficiently and effectively. While recognizing local needs, the local governments also provide a channel for the citizens to communicate their preferences, to communicate their needs to the decision makers easily and directly. So there is a good channel of communication between the governed and the governors. As Professor Alok was mentioning on aspects of fiscal decentralization, local governments typically have two major sources of revenue. One is their own source revenue, and most important among which in India is the property tax, or what is called as the land and building tax. Even though this is the most prominent source available to the local governments, and local governments can function most effectively and most accountably using this source of revenue, the amount of revenue that the local governments generate using their own sources is quite low. It's below 10% in this country. And as Professor Alok was mentioning, a lot of the fund requirement of the local governments come from the state government and from the central government, which leads to, in some ways, unaccountable functioning of the local governments because they're no longer responsible to their taxpayers but to someone else. So they get a lot of funds which are assigned by the state governments and also part of the state government taxes. How all these taxes and sources of revenue are distributed from the state governments and the central government to the local governments, which basically are the panchayats in the rural areas and urban local bodies in the urban areas, is the subject of work of the finance commissions. The State Finance Commission, which has come into being through the constitutional amendments which Professor Alok was mentioning about, they talk about the distribution of resources available to local bodies at the state level. The Central Finance Commission, which figures in Article 280 of the Constitution, that talks about the interstate distribution of finances between the states as well as the local governments. So this is the work of the Finance Commission. The Finance Commissions have a very important role to play with respect to how the framework of fiscal decentralization works in the country. And one key aspect is that we need to recognize that even though the local governments have a very important role to play and can function efficiently, but quite often their agenda is diverted by the states. The states create parallel structures which keep interfering with the local governments, and that creates problems in the service delivery by the local governments. Another key aspect which is characteristic of the local governments, especially the rural local bodies, is the wide variation in the way the rural local bodies, the panchayats, are structured. The size of the panchayats, the population they cater to, is widely variable, from a little over 300 people being catered to in state like Meghalaya to more than 20,000 people being catered to in Kerala. Of late, the tendency of many states is to make smaller and smaller panchayats, and those panchayats may not even be viable in delivering the services as viable service delivery entities. There are also wide variations in the way the panchayat, the rural local body, is structured, in terms of the composition of the panchayat, number of members, the tenure of the chairperson of the panchayat, who is typically called the sarpanch, which varies from 1 year in Karnataka, 2.5 years in Maharashtra, to 5 years in many other states. So this is the wide variation we see in the structuring of the local bodies. Now, one important aspect which is missing in the effective functioning of the rural local bodies, panchayat, are their organizational capacities. Because they have very little own source revenue of their own, they have to depend upon devolution of the state and the center, which comes quite often as a tide fund flow to the local bodies. They have to deliver on something. They cannot enhance their own capacity. They cannot create their own manpower using those resources substantially. Because of that, there is a dearth of manpower in the local bodies. There is a dearth of organizational capacity in the local bodies compared to what they are expected to deliver. Professor Alok was mentioning about 29 matters which are to be devolved to the local bodies, to the rural local bodies. And many states have notionally devolved those functions to the local bodies, but without devolving the necessary funds for effective delivery of those functions, without devolving effective functionaries for delivering those services. So as a result, there is a distortion in the system, in the accountability system of the local bodies. Some have functions, don't have the functionaries and the finances. This creates for a lot of problems in the effective capacity or capacities of the local bodies, which therefore calls for a lot of enhancement. And that can come about only when we look at the local bodies holistically and what they have to deal with holistically, providing them, devolving the necessary functions to them, along with providing finances as well as functionaries. Only when we provide all three together can the local bodies' capacities be enhanced and they can be vibrant entities. The central government asked these local bodies to deal with a number of programs. Professor Alok was mentioning about the MG Narega, which is the world's largest safety net which operates in this country, and the MG Narega program, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, is typically operationalized through the panchayats, which lack the capacity to deliver effectively on that. Very few people enroll the needy beneficiaries, take up works, and so on and so forth. So these are the various problems with the capacity. Panchayats are tasked to deliver huge programs, but don't have the capacity to deliver on them. And sad thing to note is that we've not taken concrete steps to enhance the capacity of the panchayats, thereby meaning the capacities of the functionaries as well as the elected representatives of the panchayats. One of the reasons that people talk about is the MG Narega program is not doing well, or the rural development programs, which is a huge investment in this country, amounting to about 4 lakh crores of investment from the government, which goes into the rural development and panchayat raj programs. They are not dealt with effectively by well-capacitated functionaries, be they elected representatives or employees of the panchayats. This is a crying need and we have to work on this, and this is what the NIRD is involved in. So we do various things for enhancing the services, and that includes development of a services-based citizen charter for the panchayats, which has now been rolled out in almost 2 lakh panchayats. We every year develop a Gram Panchayati development plan, which is rolled out in 2.5 lakh panchayats of this country. This year we are making a change in the Gram Panchayat development plan pattern. For the first time in the world, India is now targeting on the localization of SDGs, systematically working on achievement of SDGs through the local bodies and through the mechanism of the Gram Panchayat development plan. But the big question to ask still is, are the capacities able to do this? Do they have the capacity to deliver? And what can we do to enhance those capacities? I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You just heard the administrative view of panchayat. Dr. Alok gave us the constitutional view. You just got it, administrative view. If those who are doing research, Panchayat Raj empowerment or empowerment of rural or local bodies is the biggest randomized controlled trial experiment of Government of India, which is going on since 1992 and perhaps will go on till I leave this planet, maybe even beyond that. But fact remains that these panchayats are still delivering service despite all these poverty of resources or poverty of fund function and functionaries which has not been devolved to them. It is because of local leadership taken by the Sarpanch. He might be illiterate, he might not be trained in ISB, but he is delivering roti kapda makan to his panchayats. He is delivering basic services like Bijli Sadak Pani. Even today he is also helping his citizens to get broadband and representing 300 people to 20,000 people, as my colleague was saying, from Meghalaya to Kerala. But fact remains that being constitutional head of that family, they are supposed to deliver development at the shortest possible time, and they can be thrown out after every 5 years. दोस्तों कहते हैं हर एक के पास हर कुछ नहीं होता, आसमान के पास भी ज़मीन नहीं है, बट हम पंचायतों से उम्मीद करते हैं they will get elected, they will kiss the sky. So this is one more public policy dialogue that you just heard about it. Let's now turn over to urban, where most of India is going to live in next 10 to 12 years. Over to you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks so much for being here this late, and hope the next 10 minutes, I can make it worth your time. I'm going to talk about largely fiscal decentralization from the focus of municipal finances in urban areas. And my rather initiation into this topic was that I co-authored 2 reports for the 15th Finance Commission on municipal finances, both pan-India and for certain municipal corporations of our country. Now, as Professor Alok mentioned and Dr. Kumar also concurred, the state of local governance in our country is a challenging prospect, right? But at the same time, it is something that has to be dealt with. In urban areas, our urban local bodies are caught in a sort of a vicious trap. One of my colleagues mentioned that for last 2 decades, the total municipal receipts has been constant at about 1% of GDP. So it's sort of a gravitational constant. It moves maybe 0.02% here and 0.02% here year on year. But compared to Brazil, about 7% of Brazil's GDP is actually the municipal receipts. And we all know the Government of India numbers, right? The Union Government of India runs a fiscal deficit which is multiples of this. Now, so we have 4,000 plus cities, and which Sir Alok said we have municipal corporations at the very top, which are largely big cities which have population of 3 lakh or more. Then we have municipal councils which usually govern cities with a range of population from 25,000 to 3 lakhs, and Nagar Panchayats, which are the most in number, which govern cities which have population between, again, 5,000 to 25,000. That's the, anyway. threshold definition, 5,000 population for a geographical center to be classified as urban area. Now, there are certain systemic causes, right, which has rather made urban finance and rather municipal finance particularly a very challenging prospect. Now, previous speakers mentioned that there is also a parallel channel running, especially in urban areas. In urban areas, we have the state government agencies, which could be the water supply board or which could be a development agency, which are the basically state, they're parastatals. And roughly, of the total urban finance, about half of it is municipal finance and the rest is the money brought in or invested by these state government agencies to these parastatals. Right? Even then, the picture is not very rosy. Even then, we have a less than 2% rather of our GDP being invested in our urban areas. Now, of this, in municipal finances, the quality of expenditure which is made is also poor in terms that the proportion of money which is spent on salaries, pensions, establishment costs are pretty high compared to what is being spent on the operation and management and on capex or capital expenditure. So not only is my level of expenditure low, my quality of expenditure is also poor. Coming to receipts, there is only one holy grail left in municipal receipts or revenue, which is property tax. And that is the potential of property tax has not been utilized across cities at all. So certain cities might be doing better, like Bangalore, Pune. Certain cities like Delhi are pretty lagging behind. There are innovations happening in terms of better coverage, in better assessment or valuation of properties, and then techniques of self-assessment which actually reduce the paperwork and eventually collection. But at the same time, there are varying estimates that across cities, roughly maybe between 20 to 60%, and Dr. Chari can probably concur if he has some other number, of the potential of property tax is actually being tapped into. Now, own source revenue is nothing but what the urban local bodies are collecting themselves, right? And that has been on more or less a secular decline over the last so many years, as a result of which their dependence on intergovernmental transfers, whether it is from the transfer from the central government to the union government, and more so transfers from the state government, has increased a lot. And what that does is, of course, over time, and it erodes the autonomy of the urban local government. Among the components of municipal receipts, the most important, as we see from here, is that of state transfers. So whatever the state government is giving me in forms of either revenue sharing or grants, that is the largest component, making the urban local bodies perforce dependent on the state governments in a big way. Now if I compare even the tax revenue overall that the urban local bodies in 2017-18 had collected, and look at the tax ratio for centers and state combined, it's really, the story there is baffling. Now, even across state transfers, across states, there's wide differences. So like some states like Karnataka have a very high, 3,000 plus per capita of state transfer, whereas somewhere like Punjab, where really it is not in the form of state transfer, though really even then because it largely kind of goes in terms of compensation and might be rather counted as a part of my own source revenue. So that is there. Now, even arriving at these numbers is a challenge. Why so? Because each urban local body maintains its accounts in a different way. So understanding, and even an understanding from their perspective, because for them cash is fungible. Where it comes from, it really doesn't matter, right? So whether it is coming as grants or whether it is coming from the center, whether it's coming from the state, it really doesn't matter. But it's very important to understand fiscal decentralization and where we are, right, on the curve or on the cycle of it. It's important to understand these numbers. And these numbers, while they are the best possible numbers, out there, which I can vouch for, are still a work in progress, I would say. Now coming to state transfers per se. The state government, so among transfers also, there are also transfers to the urban local bodies from the union government, which are largely transfers from the central government, either as a part of the big missions like Amrut, JNNURM previously, or Swachh Bharat mission, and also these CFC transfers, the Central Finance Commission transfers. But coming to state transfers, because central transfers are really 1/3 of what the state transfers are on an average. And the state transfers are the the meatiest part of the overall pie. Even among them, if it's the green and the red is what is we call revenue sharing. That okay, the state government has collected so much of revenue through taxes, etc. And this is how much they are, rather from that pool they are giving to the urban local bodies, either through assigned revenue, right, that for example motor vehicle tax. The state government might be collecting it but sharing a part of it with the urban local body. Vis-a-vis the state SFC devolution, where it's largely a formula driven thing, that the State Finance Commission has put in a formula, and that okay, based on this formula, so much part of the state divisible pool, which by the way each state defines in a different way. The definition of the divisible pool across states also varies. That is your SFC devolution, and the bottommost is the yellow part is the grants which come from the state government to the urban local bodies. Now, higher the proportion of grants, lower is the predictability of the flow of money which comes from the state governments to the urban local body. If I know that okay, as a child, or my child knows that okay, my mother has said okay, whatever 1% of whatever household income will be given to me as my pocket money, vis-a-vis that next month I will say okay, I can give you 10 rupees, I can give you 1000 rupees. That becomes all the more difficult for ULBs to actually plan their finances, to plan their expenditure. Right? So, improving the predictability of the flows from the state government is very, very important. Now, most of the data that we have at the level of ULBs is for municipal corporations, to some extent for municipal councils. But a bulk, so how it goes is that about 200 plus, about 227 right now, is that's a number of municipal corporations. We have about 2100 municipal councils, and we have about 2000 odd nagar panchayats. But what the latest report even that the RBI has come out is actually just for the municipal corporations. What is happening with the municipal councils and the nagar panchayats, this 4000 odd plus urban local bodies, is something not known. And this dependency on states, as we can see from the graph here, the two graphs, is much more so in the case of smaller urban local bodies. So the way ahead is that, as I said, property tax is the holy grail of municipal finances. And there is no two ways but to ramp that up, beef that up across all ULBs of all shapes and sizes. Secondly, a question which is open to discourse is that with the advent of GST, certain taxes like advertisement tax, entertainment tax became subsumed, which were local body taxes, which were local taxes, became subsumed into into state GST, and as a result of which the local bodies lost these out. The most prominent one, the story that we keep on hearing, is Mumbai losing out octroi. But anyway, that had to be phased out anyway. But over time, what is happening is that what we see is that the GST, the pie of the tax base that municipalities all had, is further shrinking. So they are becoming more and more dependent on the state governments. So a question which is open to discourse, which I hope even researchers in the audience can further. Should ULBs really be given a share of GDP, right? Like the union government and the state governments are given a share. And as Professor Alok mentioned, strengthen SFCs, right? There are no two ways about it. Because that's the mechanism which governs how the money is flowing from the state government to the urban local bodies, for making this flow much more predictable. I will stop here, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Professor Alok asked me to speak on local government, so I'll stick to the governance aspects. Dr. Roy has already covered the fiscal situation of local governments. So I think all of us know that we use this phrase, cities are engines of economic growth, and Dr. Roy has already mentioned that 52% of the GDP comes from urban areas, cities. So, and the numbers could be vary. I mean, actually the Niti Aayog says 65% of the GDP comes from urban areas. Now, having said that, how come a 4-day public policy course has not even have one session on urban governance is I think is a starting point. When the whole economy is driven by cities, how come the the policy dialogue on which is bridging research and practice doesn't have a dedicated theme on urban governance? I think it's something we need to start thinking about. That's number one. Number two, if cities contribute 65% of the GDP, how come city governments are so poor? The cities are rich, but city governments are poor. It's like mining belts. You go anywhere in the world. The poorest of the poor people you will find in the mining areas, be it in the gold mines or even in any of the mines. So if cities are so rich, how come we are discussing about some piddly money getting transferred from national government for X mission, Y mission, Swachh Bharat, Amrut, when cities actually, Bangalore contributes 78% of the Karnataka government's budget. Hyderabad contributes almost 65 to 70%. How come we are discussing about transfers when the cities are so rich? I think this is one point we need to start looking at it. Third point is, how come when cities are so rich and how come the service delivery in cities are so terrible? I mean, local government service delivery, be it in water supply, sanitation, public transportation. The ISB is sitting in one of the most promising land. There's no sewer system in this area. The whole of growth corridor around Hyderabad, the financial district, the whole of this area which is growing at almost like 300%, doesn't have sewer system. In many parts it doesn't have water supply system, pipe water supply system. So the service delivery, so this is a very tricky situation where you have rich cities, phenomenal contribution, growing at a very, very rapid pace. At the same time, the service quality is terrible. In fact, it's slipping down. Be it if you look at any municipal service. Now, it is in this context, I thought I will just tell you a 3-4 minute story of Hyderabad, because many of you are in Hyderabad. I thought when Dr. Alok asked me, should I speak about Hyderabad? He said, yes, absolutely right. So, Honorable CM one day called us and said, can we think about Hyderabad in a completely new frame? You know, it's growing very fast, it's all great, it's one of the most livable cities in the country, but how do we take it to a second level? And that's how the mandate, you know, he spoke for 3 hours, I spoke for 3 minutes. But that was good. He gave his vision and then he asked to come up with a blueprint. So I'll share about 3-4 minutes of the vision and the blueprint that we have outlined, with a single premise that it's not about the fiscal problem. The challenge is about the governance and institutions. Even if I pour millions of dollars in the current governance system, it will be like a leaking bucket. You have a bucket which is leaking. You continue to create new assets, continue to create new water points. By the time I bring the bucket to my house, there's no water in it. And that is a story of our local government systems. It's not about the money, it's about the governance, it's about the institutions, it's about the accountability of these institutions, and that's the mandate we try to look at it in the context of Hyderabad. We have looked at other cities also, but this is just one example of Hyderabad. So we wanted to communicate to him that Hyderabad requires better quality of water, better sanitation, blah blah blah, all the SDG parameters. But how do I communicate this to a politician? So to communicate this vision that Hyderabad should be Hyderabad 2.0, should all have these services, how do I communicate to a politician? So we try to create what is called a graphic visualization. This is a famous Hyderabad Musi River. If all of us and our children can swim in Musi River, then city of Hyderabad has achieved what is called livability. We don't need to have these SDG numbers. If each one of us can swim in the river Musi, and you can see here, Musi is in the middle, it's like Singapore, then people are strolling, enjoying the quality of life around Musi, then I think Hyderabad has reached what is called livability level. Now how do I get there? So we started diagnosing the situation of Hyderabad. I mean, we all know. So a couple of points for our conversation. Hyderabad is like this. There's a Greater Hyderabad Corporation. ISB is within the ring you see here, the outer ring road. It's on the fringes of GHMC, Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation. And there is a big vision of regional ring road around Hyderabad. It's in the HMDA area, we call it Metropolitan Development Area. So Hyderabad is one of the fastest growing city. The decadal population is phenomenal. While the core city grows at a modest level, the surrounding municipalities are growing at 183%, 2000%, 140% growth. Now, if I pour money even in these growth corridors, and as Dr. Narendra Kumar said, without any capacity, without any governance, without any accountability, the service delivery will not improve. And that's the point we were trying to make. Now Hyderabad is growing at a phenomenal rate, 49 outgrowth towns, 23 census towns, all in this densely populated area. Much surrounding Hyderabad. So we did a bit of modeling. Now, if you look at this growth, 92, 2003, 2009, 2014, we have up to 2050, there is no organized growth. It's organic. The suburbanization is madness. So at one level it goes towards east, after a decade it goes towards west, in another decade it goes towards Middle East. So in this disorganized planning process, आप जितना भी पैसा डालिए, the service quality will not improve. And we did this modeling for up to 2050, saying that even if I bring 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, Swachh Bharat Mission, Amrut Mission is going to be peanuts unless and until we organize this whole space systematically. And that's the point I was trying to drive at. It is not just about money issue. It's about governance, it's about institutions, it's about vision, it's about organizing things. we don't have a concept of economic planning. How many Fortune 500 companies are situated in Hyderabad? Any guess? Global 500 Fortune companies. Any guess? 50. 100. So it's close to, just to given the time constraint, we have about 85 global Fortune 500 companies around this belt. Gurgaon has about 80. Hyderabad, Bangalore, these are the hubs. Now when these global Fortune 500 companies are coming in this area, what is it we are doing about it? Are we planning the space to absorb these economic anchors in the city? Unfortunately, no. So this is just an example. We try to map for the next 20 years. What are the plans? How many real estate projects are coming up? How many commercial projects are lined up for the next 7 years? Collecting data from all sorts of sources, big real estate projects. Again, there is complete disconnect between service delivery and economic planning. And this is not about Hyderabad. Hyderabad is one of the best. So this is the story of urban governance, and this public policy dialogue should start thinking about it, start debating about it. So there is a complete mismatch between economic growth, infrastructure, service delivery. Money will flow. Just to give you an example, it's mind-boggling the number of service delivery agencies trying to find space and organize themselves and deliver services. Who is doing policy? Who is doing planning? Who is doing service delivery? Who is regulating? The same agency is regulating themselves, the same agency is setting the policy, same agency is delivering services, same agency is doing the planning. It's a complete conflict of interest situation. Now just to give you an example, any city or any organization, you need to have a line of control. Now public transport is a great example. Who actually organizes mobility in the city? Any guess? Who does mobility planning in the city? Any city? Sorry? Local transport. There's nothing like local transport. I think it's a bright idea. Who does the mobility planning of a city? Metropolitan governance only does the land use planning. No one. Or everyone. If everyone is doing, it means nobody is doing it. So what the point is about, accountability of service delivery is super important. Now here is a great example. The multiple agencies, except for the Chief Secretary of the state, nobody can organize them in a systematic way. And the mobility planning is not done by only formal institutions. There are informal institutions like Autowalas to Ubers and many other informal service delivery agencies. Who does this organized planning? These are the questions we need to start looking at it. And we try to do what is called a Big Bang reform story that we try to communicate, and that's called Hyderabad 2.0. Hopefully this would be approved sooner or later. But we gave a set of recommendations. One such recommendation is, it's like we need to have a greater Hyderabad authority, and then you have multiple municipal corporations for service delivery, and then wards, empowered wards for citizen touch point. Module on urban governance and policy related issues so that we can have a greater dialogue and debate. Thank you very much.
I thought we will take some question, but I am also supposed to speak for 15 minutes, so I will curtail that to 2 minutes. Should we have? Can we have one question from anyone?
Many questions.
Yeah. If you want a panelist to answer, kindly name him. Otherwise. everybody will.
For everyone, first question would be from local, from Panchayati Raj, rural government, then urban government, something. It's not a question, it's just first, I just finished my PhD, and my topic of the PhD was people's participation as a yardstick of good governance, a study of rural development programs. So, what was the gap there in this review of literature? First, many gaps were there. First gap I just want to pose here, that is, I got the literature from India here in only local government. Here there was a topic we always have to speak on local governance, but I did not get this local governance and this type of literature. So there is a shift. You have gone through. I got through the B.C. Smith book. We had all about this, and there I was having this base thesis from Bangladesh, Victoria University, the Ministry of something there in Wahiduzzaman. They have some 3 or 4 pages from shift from local government to local governance, the concepts from there. But here I do not get that. Still in this discussion I am not able to grasp what is the governance and what is the government. All we talk about the government. So next thing is we should talk about the governance as we talk about the governance in all over India. That's my question number one. And another question is, I forgot one question, and another question is to urban local governors. That's not. Sir made the point that Hyderabad is growing. It's my not my opinion, and it's my opinion after going through the many reviews, and also from that I have already just had a question in second session. That is, Hyderabad is not growing. This is millionaires are adding in this economy, Hyderabadi economy. Millionaires are growing, real estate is growing, and they are just reducing their taxes. That is why Hyderabad is growing. Not the Hyderabad is growing, it's the millionaires are growing. New startups are coming, new investments are going in this economy. And who are the people? They avoid to avoid the taxes. They are just investing in real estate. That's it. And here, second thing is India. Problem of India is that we have given still. I am emphasizing that still we have given the power to financial institutions. Here it is FDI, Fortune, 500 Fortune companies came here with another things that HSBC came with them, ISI came with them. Why they will get the money? Why they will get the ranks in the economy? From the economy, from the real estate, they will fund these newly ventured companies, these companies. So kindly give answer of these things, and mostly local governance.
Thank you, gentlemen. In fact, it is equivalent of 5 questions. And since we don't have time, I will exercise my right to not to reply. But yes, my colleagues will give you due reply when they meet you in person. Friends, you just discussed about a leaking bucket. I would like to amplify that. In 47, we got a broken bucket. What was the life expectancy? How many colleges were there? How many ISBs there were? How many IIMs were there? How many urban areas were there? How many people had telephone? How many people were having jeans? You fast forward the clock, last 25 years. Getting a gas connection used to be an achievement. Getting a landline telephone was a bigger achievement. Of course, marrying a ISB trained graduate spouse was always a very big deal. But rest of the things in life were part of struggle in making. You fast forward yourself in 2022, where we stand. We repaired the bucket, we prevented the holes, and we made the size of the bucket bigger. And today we are bigger than our own occupier, who left us in 1947, and we are the 5th largest economy. Let's be proud of all that we have achieved. Yes, it has not happened because government was experimenting. Government's job is to experiment. When we started, our problem was poverty and employment. Even today, our problem is aging population, rising income inequality, climate change, and of course, the only route that government has is how to manage digital disruptions. We thought that intelligence will do the right thing. Bureaucrats always believed in virtual reality because they were away from reality. Today's tech world is famous for virtual reality, AR and VR. They're talking about artificial intelligence. We always claim that bureaucrats always have that intelligence. Sometimes it was artificial also. We always claimed it was real. And with all those problems, we are so far fifth largest economy in the world. With all those problems, you have 85 MNCs operating from a small city of Hyderabad. We were known for Charminar only. Today we've got 85 Charminars who are equivalent of any Charminar anywhere in the world. Boys of Hyderabad, Bangalore, Kochi, Trivandrum, anywhere, they are managing the capital that is flowing from globe from anywhere to anywhere. You are the back office of the world. We are the software power of the world. Let's also realize the problem at the government level. I always say this, and I would like to quote it here. We have the problem what Duryodhan has in Mahabharata. What Duryodhan has in Mahabharata? If I put it Sanskrit, I hope you can follow it. I will explain it. Janami dharmam nachame pravritti. मैं जानता हूँ धर्म क्या है, बट ऐसे साथी संगति मिलेंगे चल नहीं सकता. जानाम अधर्मम, मैं अधर्म भी जानता हूँ, क्या नहीं हो सकता. नच में निवृत्ति, मैं उससे मुक्त नहीं हो पाता. भारत सरकार में या गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया में, स्टेट लेवल पे, लोकल लेवल पे, पब्लिक पॉलिसी लेवल पर this debate goes on. We want our academic institution to become the voice of Vidur, which should be the sane voice which government of the day would be forced or persuaded to accept. And I must compliment ISB for making that happen. This debate will continue. Public policy is not a one-day affair, neither the development of social being. Samaj, Sarkar, Bazaar, if you manage this triangle, you can manage any society. But till first 50 years, we were trying to develop institutions which had done great work in American soil, but they were unfit for India. Even a great institution like Planning Commission we have to abolish to see that a semblance of development takes place. We opened banks, people wanted banking. We nationalized banks, people wanted banking. We nationalized banks and gave them enough capitalization of 4 lakh crore per year, sir. People did not get banking. Corona, during Corona Kal, Jan Dhan scheme was launched. With digital and Aadhaar enabled banking, 46 crore more accounts were opened in 2 years without a single bank branch being opened in India. Digitally we can serve our people, even if urban and local bodies are lame, duck, deaf and deaf. It doesn't matter who provides service. People say that if cat can catch mouse, it doesn't matter whether the color of the cat is black or semi-black or half white or pink or any other color. Same thing is true for public service delivery. Indians of today are no longer Indians of 1947. When I joined IS in 1985, the joke was for every 100 rupees, 85% goes to the bureaucrat and politician, only 15% trickle downs. We abandoned trickle-down theory. Today we believe in what we call it waterfall approach. Let 100% money go to the person whom it belongs. We have removed exclusion errors by one stroke of pen. Same bureaucracy, same politician, same technology and same people of Hyderabad and boys and girls of India have done it. Let us be proud of our achievement. Public policy dialogue and debate is not a one-day affair. We got only 1 hour. In fact, Chari alone needs 1 day. Dr. Alok needs a couple of weeks to amplify. Mr. Kumar needs his lifetime to explain it. And I have finished my inning, but I do believe that हम होंगे कामयाब. और वो दिन यही समय है, सही समय है, भारत का अनमोल समय है. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me compliment ISB team for providing my team this opportunity. At this hour, people don't meet in conference hall. They meet with glasses with full of water and colored water. But all of you are sitting with your patience with us. I must compliment and thank each one of you for your perseverance and belief that something is likely to trickle down to each one of you. I hope and trust that my colleagues have not left you unsatisfied. But सबको सहज संतुष्ट करना मुश्किल मार्ग है. सहज मार्ग यही है जो लोग बोलते हैं ना कि मुस्कुराने के लिए दौलत चाहिए, बोलते हैं ना खूब पैसा हो तो जल्दा खुश रहेंगे, मुस्कुराएंगे, लेकिन अगर ये सच होता तो गरीब कभी मुस्कुराता नहीं. Let's believe in ourselves, we can develop a great nation. Public policy dialogue and ISB floor. We must thank each one of us individually and collectively, ISB team, for giving us a chance, including the team IIPA, to be partner in this public policy dialogue. Thank you once again.